and soldering are coming under liquid state welding. So can you tell what is liquid state welding? Why is it called as liquid state welding? Can anybody answer this? What is liquid state welding? How is it different than our any liquid state welding? So sorry. My question is, what is solid liquid state welding? Can anybody ask? Today we are going to discuss about solid liquid state welding. What is solid liquid state welding? Can anybody answer? What is the difference between liquid state welding and solid liquid state welding? Generally, brazing and soldering are coming under this category. Can anybody answer this? What is solid liquid state welding? In solid liquid state welding, as the title says, one is solid, second one is liquid. In liquid state welding, we melt the base material to be joined. Suppose you want to join two pieces like this, then we melt the interface region of the two materials to be joined. We melt that region and then we solidify. So that's why that is called as liquid state welding. So all the fusion welding processes are coming under liquid state welding processes category. So arc welding, fusion welding, resistance welding, and laser beam welding, and electron beam welding, all are coming under this liquid state welding processes, because you were melting the interfacial region. If you want to join two parts together, you are melting the interface region, and after solidification you get a joint. That's why that is called as liquid solid state welding. But what is so that is called as liquid state welding. What is solid liquid state welding? In solid liquid state welding, your base material to be joined will be not melted. You have to keep two pieces to, if you want to join two pieces like this, your base material will be as it is. You have to take a filler material, and the filler material will be melted and deposited here. Okay, so your filler material will be melted and base material will not be melted. So base material will be solid and filler material will be liquid. So filler material will be melted and deposited. So brazing and soldering are coming under this category. So in brazing and soldering, a low melting non-ferrous metal, filler metal, is melted and then drawn into the space between two solid surfaces to be joined. Then you can get a joint. So that is solid liquid state welding process. Definition of solid liquid state welding process. And brazing and soldering both are coming under solid liquid state joining process category. So what is brazing? If the temperature is higher than 450 degrees centigrade, that is called as brazing. If the processing temperature is less than 450 degrees centigrade, that is called as soldering. So in solid liquid state welding, what happens? You have to keep, if you want to join two pieces together, then you have to keep two base pieces together. Then you have to place a filler material near the two pieces to be joined together, near the two joint pieces. So here you have to place a filler material, and then you have to melt the filler material, and then the filler material will move between this, and then it will make a joint. Okay, so here base material, you are keeping base material as it is, you are not melting the base material, and you have to only melt the filler material, and after that it will go and deposit the weld. So you will get a joint. So if the temperature is higher, it is called as brazing. It means if the processing temperature is above 450 degrees centigrade, it is brazing. If the processing temperature is below 450 degrees centigrade, it is soldering. It means whatever filler materials you are going to use for brazing, it should have a melting point above 450 degrees centigrade, and solder filler material should have melting point of less than 450 degrees centigrade. This is the only difference between brazing and soldering. Otherwise, the working principle of brazing and soldering are exactly same. So as you know, soldering has wide applications. Soldering is used extensively in electronic assemblies, whereas the joints provide sufficient strength while allowing the various components to transmit electronic signals. So how does joining happen in brazing and soldering? As you know, in a liquid state welding process, joining is happening because of melting and solidification. At the adjoining area, the base metal melts and or filler material melts, and then you are able to join in. So base metal melts and then you get a joint. So what is the joining mechanism in brazing and soldering? Can anybody answer this? Yeah, the question is what is the joining mechanism in brazing and soldering, or how does joining happen in brazing and soldering? Can anybody answer? Is it melting and soldering, melting and solidification, or what? What is the joining mechanism? How does joining happen? What is the joining mechanism in case of brazing and soldering? The question is how does joining happen in brazing and soldering? So what is the joining mechanism? As you said, you can melt the filler material by using any torch. Then you can deposit that molten metal between the interface. You can provide two materials and give some gap, and then the molten metal can go inside and it can join. Now you have melted the filler material and deposited between two workpieces to be joined. Okay. Then as per your view, joining happened. Okay. So what will be the joint strength? Whether the joint strength will be equivalent to the strength of your filler material, or it will be equivalent to the strength of your base material, or it will be lesser than that strength of filler material or higher than the strength of filler material. What will be the joint strength? So in take two plates, two glass plates. Okay. Keep one over other. Okay. Then you want to try to separate. You can easily separate, right? Because there is no, you have not fixed anything. Or take two papers, place like this, and you can easily slide. Or take two plates, keep one over other, you can easily slide, isn't it? You can easily slide, right? It is no, it will not have any resistance force. And if you take a drop of water, place water and try to do tensile testing, you can easily test, you can easily pull out, because water is not having any tensile strength. Now put a drop of water between two plates to be two plates. Take one plate, take a drop of water on that, and take a glass plate again and cover it. Now try to pull out. Can you able to pull out by using zero force? Or you need to apply some. See, if you place two plates together, you then you can easily drag one over other, because there is no, you have not tightened it. Both are free. You can easily drag one over other. When you take water is not having any strength. Now you put only one drop of water on the bottom plate, glass plate, and place the top plate on top of it. Then try to drag. Can you drag it by applying zero force, or you need to apply some force to drag? The same thing is happening in brazing. So as we said, that cohesive and attractive forces are happening, that is called as capillary action or surface tension. So same thing, you take a paper towel like tissue paper, put some water, place the tissue paper on it. What happens? It sucks the water. Or take a cold drinks bottle, and place a straw and try to, so when you place a straw, water will come up. So because of your capillary action. Same thing is happening in case of brazing. In brazing, the joining is happening because of capillary action, because of bonding as well as capillary action. That's why the bond strength is even higher than the strength of the filler material, and also it may be higher than the strength of the base material. That is the beauty of brazing. In joining, bonding is happening because of melting and solidification. However, in brazing, joining is happening because of capillary action. You have to place the two plates together, provide some gap, then when you melt. So for example here, so suppose this is your one plate, this is second plate. If you want to join, then you have to provide some gap, then you have to place your filler material here. This is your filler material. Then you have to melt the filler material. When you melt the filler material will be sucked into this area because of capillary action, and then it will cover the whole region, and the strength, then the bonding happens because of bonding as well as capillary action. So that is the beauty of brazing and soldering. Both brazing and soldering, the principle of joining in brazing and soldering is same. Okay. However, the filler material melts at if the melting point of the filler material is above 450 degrees centigrade, that is called as brazing. If it is less than 450 degrees centigrade, that is called as soldering. Okay. So then what is the condition? What are the conditions necessary for successful brazing and soldering? The first condition is, what is the first condition? You have to melt the filler material. You should have a provision to melt filler material. This is the first condition. Second condition is the melting point, MP means melting point, of filler material should be lower than that of base material. Then only filler material will be melted and base material will be as like that. Without then what will happen? Then what is the conditions required? So one is provision to melt the filler material. Then the melting point of filler material should be lower than the base material. Okay, if both conditions are there, then what else is required? The filler material should wet the parent material. So filler material should wet the parent material. Okay, then then it should spread and make contact with joint opening. So the filler material should spread, filler material should wet the parent material and it should spread. Then what will happen? Then you should have a provision for capillary action. So here the point 3 and 4, point 3, 4 and 5 are important. So what is the basic requirement? Prime requirement. The prime requirement is the filler material should wet the base material. Suppose this one and this one you want to join, the filler material should wet, so it should have high wettability. Then the point 4 says after wet it should also spread continuously. When you place a water on it, it can place continuously, then only it will wet. However, when you place a mercury on a solid place, it will be like that. So it will not wet completely. So water is having good wettability than this mercury. So like that. So the capillary action, then it should have high point 3 satisfies, like filler material should wet the parent material. For that it should have high wettability. The next point is it should spread continuously, completely. So for that what is the necessary requirement? The contact angle should be as low as possible. So for example, contact angle means the angle between, this is the angle, this is your contact angle, this is theta, contact angle. Here contact angle is 0. Or some cases what will happen? Some cases filler material may become like this. So in this case the contact angle is, this is theta, this is contact angle. So that's why the contact angle should be low, high wettability, low contact angle. And third point is it should have high capillary action. So to satisfy the third point, filler material should have good wettability, and the fourth point says it should have high low contact angle. So for these 2 points, what is the requirement? To satisfy point 3 and point 4, what is the requirement? The requirement is the filler material should have low melting point, then only it will have high wettability, it can melt easily and move easily. It should have low viscosity. So to satisfy point 3 and 4, the filler material should have low viscosity, it should have low melting point, and what else? It should have it should able to remove the oxide layer. So if you will have oxide layer at the interface, then it will not able to join. It should able to remove the oxide layer. These 3 things are required, and these few things are required for to satisfy point 3 and 4. And point 5 is it should have provision for capillary action. It should have provision for capillary action. To satisfy point 5, which condition is required? The condition is required is you have to provide proper, for this to satisfy 0.5, you should have provide a sufficient clearance. So to satisfy 0.1, clearance is a very important parameter. Clearance means you have to provide the clearance. This is your clearance. This is your clearance. You should provide a clearance in such a way that it will cause capillary action. If the clearance will be very high, then the effect of capillary action will be negligible. For capillary action to happen, there should be a optimum clearance. Okay. The second criteria is the joint design. You should have a proper joint design. So you should have a proper joint design in order to obtain high capillary action. So in order to qualify, in order to satisfy 0.5, you have to provide proper clearance and you have to make proper joint design. So then we discussed that to satisfy 0.3 and 4, we should have high wettability, and we should have, so wettability is a parameter, wetting is a parameter, and contact angle is a parameter. Okay. So what is wetting and what is wetting angle or contact angle? When you place a molten droplet, for example here, so this is your solid piece, workpiece. Now this is your workpiece. So this is solid. Now if you place a droplet of filler material, so in my workpiece I am placing a droplet here. Droplet of filler, sorry. When I want to enhance the capillary action, what I have to do? I have to melt the filler material. I have to use this is workpiece. Then I have to use filler material, and after I have to melt the filler material. Then filler material should wet the workpiece area. So when I melt, then what may happen? The filler material may place like this, may retain like this, or the filler material may deposit like this, or the filler material may completely flow like this. It depends upon the wettability of the filler material on the workpiece, against the workpiece. Suppose this is the workpiece. So this is, if this is the workpiece, is my surface free energy. If surface free energy is gamma s, this is my solid phase. So this is my surface free energy of the solid phase workpiece. Okay. Now this is the droplet. This is the droplet, filler material droplet. So this is in liquid. The filler material is in liquid state. So filler material is liquid. So this is what is this energy? This energy will be surface free energy of solid liquid. So here my solid is workpiece and liquid is the filler material. So this is the surface free energy interface between solid workpiece and liquid filler material. Now what is this one? This one is the surface free energy between, this is liquid, this is vapor. So liquid and vapor. Okay. Then what is this angle? This angle is contact angle. So this angle is contact angle. Theta equal to contact angle. So if when I place my molten filler material on the workpiece, against the workpiece, if the filler material will wet my workpiece with an angle of theta like this, so with an angle of theta, if it will wet, so let us say this is the condition. So this is my angle theta. I have enlarged this view. I have enlarged this view and I have shown here. Okay. So this is theta, and this is, so then what will happen? So for making equilibrium, what should I do? So gamma s should be equal to, what is this? So gamma s equal to surface energy for solid is equivalent to new surface energy of liquid vapor of cos theta plus this one. This one is mu SL. So it means for equilibrium, to maintain equilibrium, surface free energy of solid should be equivalent to multiplication of summation of this product plus this one. So this is equivalent to nu LV surface energy of mu LV cos theta plus surface energy of solid liquid, this one. What does it mean when complete wetting is possible? So finally we got S equal to mu LV cos theta plus mu SL. It means this is surface energy of solid, this is surface energy of solid vapor, liquid vapor, and this is surface energy of solid liquid, and theta equal to wetting angle. Okay, so what is the condition here? Here we got that nu S equal to for equilibrium nu x is equivalent to nu, what we did. So this is again, this is nu S, again here this is nu L SL, and this is my nu L V. Okay, so nu S equal to, this is my contact angle theta. So nu LV sub LV cos theta plus nu SL. It means for equilibrium to happen, my surface energy, surface spin energy for solid is equivalent to this. Now, when complete wetting is possible, so what is desirable? Desirable is complete wetting. When theta equal to 0, when theta equal to 0, then what will happen? Then it can completely wet. Okay, so complete wetting. So in this condition, when theta equal to 0, nu S equal to nu LV plus nu SL. It means for complete wetting to happen, this surface spin energy of solid should be equivalent to summation of surface energy of liquid vapor plus surface energy of solid liquid. So it indicates that while selecting, this is a important, very important parameter. That's why we have to select a filler material and workpiece material in such a way that the surface energy of this what does this equation tells us? This equation tells us that this if you want to select a filler material for wetting a solid surface, you have to select in such a way that the surface energy of the filler material should be sufficiently lower than that of the solid material. It means surface energy of the solid material should be much higher than that of surface energy of the filler material. Okay. Now what happens when theta equal to so if theta equal to 0, then we will get complete wetting. If theta equal to less than 90, if theta equal to less than 90, then we will get wetting. Wetting is possible, but not complete. If theta equal to 90, then it will have, so here theta equal to 90, you will have just wetting. So wetting will be poor. When if theta equal to, so if theta is greater than 90, then suppose theta is greater than 90 means it will just sit here. So wetting may not be that effective. So for complete wetting to happen, your wetting angle should be as small as possible. So for that you have to select a proper filler material. So filler material should have high solidification range. The filler material should have very low viscosity. The filler material should have low melting point. All the things matter. So while selecting the filler material, you should consider all the properties of the filler material. So what is the difference between bridging and soldering? In bridging, anybody can tell what is the difference between bridging and soldering? We discussed that in bridging, joining is happening because of capillary action and bonding action. That's why the strength of the bridged joint, bridged or soldered joint, is higher than that of the filler material as well as that of the base material. So here we get higher joint strength than even the base, than the filler material. So what is the difference between bridging and soldering? Bridge welding. So the difference between bridging and bridge welding is in bridging joining is happening because of both capillary action as well as bonding. However, in bridge welding, joining is happening like a welding. So when if you want to make two pieces, then you have to take a filler material. If you want to take two pieces here in bridging, so you have to take a filler material, then you have to melt the filler material. When you melt the filler material will be deposited here and you will get a joint. So this joint is happening because of capillary action plus normal bonding. So here what happens? Here also you will able to join in bridge welding, but the joining will only happen because of welding. Okay. So here the capillary action is not effective. So that's why it is called as bridge welding. So joint strength, that's why the joint strength of bridging is higher than that the joint strength made by bridge welding, because bridge welding capillary action is not effective. So the gap will be more. So then how does bridging and soldering different than conventional welding? So these are the different. So in conventional welding, you have to select a filler material in such a way that the composition of the filler material should be exactly similar to your base material. Okay, and the melting point of since you have to melt both, so the melting point of filler material as well as base material is almost similar, because you are using similar composition in the conventional welding. However, in bridging and soldering, the melting point of the bridge alloy and solder alloy is very less as compared to the base material. That is one difference. Second one is the in welding, in conventional welding, the welding is happening. Conventional welding means I am talking about fusion welding. Okay, in fusion welding, the welding is happening because of melting and solidification of the base material. However, in bridging and soldering, the joining is happening because of capillary action. Okay, since the joining is happening because of capillary action, and since the temperature is very low, as we discussed, in soldering the temperature is around 450 degrees centigrade, little bit higher the 450 degrees centigrade, and in soldering, in bridging and in soldering, the melting point of the processing temperature should be less than 450 degrees centigrade. So since the processing temperature is low, so that's why whole joining process can happen very quickly. So this is a bridging and soldering is a quick and economic process. So a wide range of metallic and non-metallic materials can be welded by using bridging and soldering, such as dissimilar materials. We can join ferrous to non-ferrous metal, metal to ceramic, because here joining is happening because of capillary action. So any metal, anything to anything can be joined together. We have to create a condition for obtaining good capillary action. Okay, you have to design the joint region. We have to design the we have to provide proper clearance such that capillary action should happen. That is the mechanism. That's why any metal to any metal, even metal to non-metal, metal to ceramic, ceramic to polymer, metal to iron to steel, steel to some non-ferrous material, metal to ceramic, everything is possible. However, it is not possible in case of fusion welding process. In one class, we have already discussed why fusion welding is not preferable for joining dissimilar materials. Okay, since the temperature is less, so since the joining temperature is less, that is around in the order of 450 degrees centigrade for bridging, and in the order of less than 450 degrees centigrade for soldering. So you will have very less heat affected zone problem. Okay, so but the demerit is any subsequent heating can destroy the joint, and it may happen, corrosion may attack easily. What are the advantages of soldering and bridging? First is like it is a low temperature process, so we will get all the advantages related to that. Since it is a process in low temperature, as we discussed, we will have a very low heat affected zone region. This is the biggest advantage. Then we can use this process as a permanent joint or temporary joint. See, if you want to, since the joining process is happening at very less temperature than the melting point of base material. So if you want to disconnect with those two base material, you just heat it above the melting point of filler material. So without affecting the base property, you can easily disintegrate the two parts. So in this case, it will be, you can consider it as a temporary joining. So any dissimilar material can be joined using soldering and brazing. Brazing speed of joining is very fast, and the rate of heating and cooling is slow. So you will not get a high level of residual stress and distortion. So residual stress generation will be less in case of soldering and brazing. Okay, so any part thickness can be joined. For example, you can join a thick part with a thin part, or you can join multiple parts also like this. Anything is possible. You can easily realignment because you just melt it, fragment two parts together, fragment both of the parts by melting, by hitting the this piece above the melting point of the filler material, then again rejoin. So that is called as this realignment. That is also possible. So how to enhance the joint strength in a brazing and in a braze joint or solder joint? How to enhance the braze joint? First is by creating the clearance, because our objective is to create capillary action. So joining is happening because of capillary action. So what first important point is our joint design, and second important point is like the condition to create proper capillary action. What is the joint design? So the joint design for both are related with each other. So how to maintain capillary action? For maintaining capillary action, you have to develop proper kind of clearance. You have to create the clearance in such a way that, so if you draw the clearance versus joint strength, what will happen? This is joint strength. Okay, what will happen? So up to some level, it will enhance, and then it will deteriorate. So what will happen? So it means as you reduce the clearance, so this is clearance angle. As you reduce the clearance, what happens? The joint strength increases. Okay, so it means if the clearance is very low, then also it cannot make capillary action. So initially the joint strength gradually increases, and whenever it becomes critical gap, then it gives highest strength, then it gradually decreases. It may, so that's why in bridging your region is up to here, somewhere here or up to here, where you get high strength. In bridge welding, your region is somewhere here, so where you get only joining because of welding. However, in bridging, you have to provide the clearance in such a way that it will give high strength. Okay, and because of the capillary action. Next one is to maintain the clearance. The clearance is one part, and the joint area, surface region, because if you want to apply tensile stress, this is the and if this is your joint, so joint strength depends upon the capillary action, because of that whatever bonding is happening, as well as the joint area. So this is your joint area. So if you can, that's why you have to provide proper joint strength to the bridge area. So you have to increase the joint area like this. So you have to make this area in such a way that if this is your thickness, this should be 3T. Or if you want to make a joint in lap configuration, you have to make in such a way that this region gap, you have to maintain the gap, that is the clearance. So clearance depends upon this, and this region, if this is your T and T, so this should be your 3T. Or if you want to you may keep it in any mode, suppose like this. So now you have to maintain, this is joint design. So this is your, if this is T, generally it should be greater than 3T. So the joint area, in the joint area the thickness should be greater than 3T, then you will get better joint strength. Okay. So in bridging we use flux also. What is the function of flux in case of conventional welding process? As I said, the flux reacts with the oxides and whenever it reacts it forms slag, and since its density is low it floats on the top of the weld pool and it deposits on the top of the weld pool. So that is called a slag. So you can remove the slag before giving your next welding pass. Similarly, here also flux is very important, because here what you do, the two pieces to be joined. If you want to join two pieces like this, then at this interface there should not be any oxide layer, then it may hinder the capillary action. So you need to remove the oxide layer. For that the flux is required. For bridging you have to use filler material as well as flux. The objective of the flux is that it should dissolve the oxides that form a result of heating the part, and it should prevent the formation of new oxide during heating, and the flux also should aid the capillary action of the molten metal. So here the flux also helps in aiding the capillary action. So they use flux like for example for soldering, these are the different flux. For bridging they use different kind of flux as per the need. Then the filler material. So as we know, for soldering the melting point of the filler material should be less than 450 degrees centigrade. Similarly in bridging, the bridging is happening at above 450 degrees centigrade. So the melting point of the filler material is should be less than 450 degrees centigrade. So the process will happen above 450 degrees centigrade here. So your filler material, for example, there are different soldering filler alloys are used. For example, tin lead based filler material is used for copper and copper alloys, mild steels, galvanized steels, etc. And tin antimony alloys are used for copper and copper alloys, mild steels, like that. Similarly, for bridging also different. Sorry, this is bridging alloy. There are different bridging alloys also. For example, aluminum silicon alloys are used for aluminum based materials. Copper zinc filler materials are used for carbon steels, for joining carbon steels, cast irons, copper and copper alloys. Silver based bridging alloys are used for joining alloy steels, stainless steels, mild steel, nickel steel and copper alloys, etc. Okay, so your filler material, if you see the phase diagram, the filler material will look something like this. If you take lead tin alloy, for example, this lead tin alloy, solder alloy, it will have something like this. If you take this one, it may be tin, lead or tin, and it will have, or in a aluminum silicon alloy also, in aluminum silicon filler material also may have this kind of alloying system, phase aluminum silicon. What will happen in this case? It will have a paste. This is the liquid, this is solid, one solid phase, this is second solid phase, this is liquid plus solid phase, this is liquid plus solid phase, and here you are getting alpha plus beta, two solid phase, and your braze or solder alloy should lie in this zone. This is called a paste zone. So your alloy composition should be somewhere in this zone. So in this zone, liquid plus solid. So in brazing and soldering alloy should fall in this zone. Okay. Okay. Now, what are the welding and soldering and brazing methods? So soldering, one approach is torch soldering or brazing. What you have to do here? You have to take a torch. So the two plates to be joined will be kept like this. So you have to place the solder or braze alloy on top of it. This is the workpiece. Braze or solder alloy, that is filler. Then you have to use a torch. So use a torch and melt it. Use a torch and melt it. So then when it will melted, it will be deposited here, because then joining will happen because of capillary action as well as wetting. So what are the advantages? Since you use a simple torch to join, you can take this torch to anywhere and join in any location. So that's why it is portable and it is versatile and speed is very fast. Okay. However, so you cannot control the heat input here, so it may overheat this region also. It may overheat this region also, which are unwanted. So overheating is possible. High skill is required, and it is a fire hazardous. So this is about torch soldering and brazing. Next one is furnace soldering and brazing. In furnace soldering and brazing, what happens? Initially, you have to take, there will be a continuous furnace. So you can see this is the bed of the furnace, this is the bed of the furnace, and there is a conveyor system which moves the furnace, moves this bed continuously. The bed will be moving continuously in this direction. So there will be a conveyor system which will move the bed to this roller continuously. So and this is the furnace. So this part is the furnace. So this part is a furnace. What you have to do? So before supplying the material to the furnace, suppose you want to join a T-joint like this. Suppose this is your workpiece and this is your workpiece, and you want to join here. So you have to create some gap. So this is your workpiece. So this is your another workpiece. Create some gap from capillary action. Then place here the solder and braze alloy, and place here the solder or braze alloy. Then place here, and through the conveyor system the whole thing will move here. Then what will happen? Then here when it will enter inside the furnace, because of this heat, what will happen? You have to select the heat in such a way that the heat will able to melt the filler material. So the filler material will be melted and it will be deposited at this interface like this because of capillary action. Then when joining will happen, since it is a continuous process, then it will come and you will have a joint like this and like this. So this is called as furnace brazing or soldering, where you join it in a furnace. So what is the advantage? You can, since you are continuously doing in a furnace, so you can control the atmosphere. You can for example, you can supply argon gas to maintain inert atmosphere or something like that. So you can control the atmosphere, and since whole configuration is running, moving inside the furnace, so whole heating is happening inside the furnace, you will get uniform heating, and it is since it is a continuous process, you can make it as mass production. Since the joining is happening inside a furnace, so there is a size restriction. Depending upon the capacity of the furnace, you can join your workpiece according to that size, and the whole workpiece is heated. So you want to melt this one, but the whole workpiece is heated, so it may cause some heat damage to the workpiece. These are the demerits. Next condition is deep soldering and brazing. What is happening in deep soldering brazing is, like here what you have to do, you have to take your workpiece to be joined. Suppose you want to join two pieces like this, place the two pieces like this. Then what you have to do, you have to give some protective layer, because you want to only heat this region. Give some protective coating here, okay, and give some protective coating here. Now here at this region you place your filler material. Now filler material, as I said, filler material will be in paste region. So we discussed in one of the slide. So the filler material, if you see the phase diagram, so the filler material in this zone. So it is in semi-paste region. So you have to paste here. Then when you supply the whole thing, then what you have to do? If this is filler material, then you have to use a flux, molten flux. So the bath should be flux. So then it will be called as molten flux bath. So then what you have to do? You have to place the whole thing inside a molten salt bath. Then what will happen? Then it will, because of this heat, it will melt this filler material. Filler material will be deposited here. as well as what will happen, the flux will also be deposited. So this is molten bath. What is molten metal bath? Then in that case your you have to use flux here. In this case you have to use flux here, and filler material will be placed around, and then it will melt this one, and you can deposit this one. So since it is a dipping process, it is a mass production. You can continuously do. So you can make it mass production, and depending upon the requirement, you can provide some corrosive material inside this, so that it will prevent corrosion. To prevent corrosion, you can provide some some materials inside this molten pool, so that it can prevent corrosion and it can minimize distortion. So disadvantages are size is limited, and at a time you can do one, so quantity production is also less. Next one is resistance bridging or soldering. So next method is so this is not soldering and bridging. This is method is resistance heating. By resistance heating you can do soldering and bridging. So what is resistance heating? In we have already discussed while discussing about fusion welding. In fusion welding, what we discussed, we have to use electrode, then the two pieces to be joined will be kept like this. Then you have to place one electrode touching to this. Then you have to take two electrodes touching to it. Then this is, I am talking about the conventional bridging. So this is the workpiece. So this was my electrode. Then we were supplying a current at high current, and as a result we were getting I square RT joule heating. Okay, we were supplying high current. Because of the high current and due to resistance, the heating is happening at this interface, and because of melting and solidification, we were getting a joint at this interface. Okay, there current was high, time was very low in a conventional resistance heating process. How is it different than the what is the what type of resistance welding is now used for soldering and bridging? How is it different than the conventional resistance process? We can see from this figure. In case of bridging and soldering, what happens? We have to place our workpiece here, as like your conventional resistance. This is our workpiece 1. This is another workpiece, and you have to provide a gap. So in the gap here we have to provide filler material. In this gap we have to provide filler material. Now use the same principle. So use apply force, minor force, apply current. Because of current, what will happen? It will heat the workpiece, and it will heat this workpiece. Since this workpiece is connected to this filler material, and since the melting point of the filler material is lesser than the melting point of the workpiece, so the filler material will melt fast. As a result, it will melt and deposit. It will be deposited here, and you will get capillary reaction. So before that, you will place the filler material something like this. It will move inside this through capillary reaction, and as a result, you will get a joint. So that's why it is a quick process. It is a flameless process, clean process. So precise bridging can be possible. It can be automated also, and any resistance welding process can be automated. We saw while discussing about resistance welding process, and we can make mass production, and it is a portable equipment. So it is a easy process, good process. So this is about bridging and soldering. Okay. So anybody has any doubt on bridging and soldering? With this, we have finished the joining processes. We discussed about liquid state welding process. In liquid state welding process, we discussed about all kind of fusion welding processes. For example, we discussed about arc welding, we discussed about resistance welding, we discussed about gas welding, then we discussed about electron beam welding and laser beam welding. These are coming under liquid state process. Then we discussed about solid state processing, and in solid state processing we discussed many important processes, for example friction welding, friction stir welding, diffusion welding, deformation welding, explosion welding, and many more. So then we discuss and roll bonding. Then today's class we discussed about liquid solid state welding processes. Both brazing and soldering are coming under this category, and we discussed about brazing and soldering. So anybody has a doubt? Anyone has any doubt? Yeah. So Rohit asked, what is the relation between wetting angle and material of the workpiece? Wetting angle. What is wetting angle? In wetting angle, so after melting, suppose this is your workpiece, and you are placing your droplet. So you are placing your filler material. So after melting, what will happen? After melting, filler material will, depending upon the property of filler material, it will wet. It may wet like this, or it may wet like this, or it may wet like this. So the angle, this is your wetting angle. This theta is wetting angle. Angle perpendicular to this this is your wetting angle. No, so as one asked, like bridging is used on tool tip. Yes, we use bridging in tool tip. So is there any effect on machining temperature on the joints? It doesn't affect, because it is bridging has already been done, and then you are using that cutting tool for your machining, and the temperature is above 450 degrees centigrade, because due to bridging. Depending upon your requirement, you have to select a bridge alloy, and for example, for cutting tool, when you use to join by bridging, the temperature will be very high, and that will be higher than the temperature induced during machining. So nothing will happen. So if the temperature will be higher than the melting point of your filler material, which is used for brazing, then only your brazed material will be melted. So now we will discuss about defects in weldments and their analysis. What is a good weld? We are talking about welding. We discussed about many welding processes, and by using any welding processes, we get a weld. Okay. What is a good weld? A good weld, we can call a welding as a good weld, joint as a good weld, if we have complete fusion to the base material. If complete fusion happened on the base material, and if you get a good weld profile, if you will not have any defects like porosity, inclusion and anything, and if you will have no cracks equivalent to the base material. Suppose we have got a joint, we call a joint strength. What is joint strength? Joint strength is the ratio of strength in the weakest part of the joint material by the base strength. Okay. Generally, in some welding, the weakest region is your weld region. In some cases, the weakest region is your heat affected region. Okay. So depending upon the weakest strength, it will fail. So the joint strength is the ratio of strength in the weakest region by, or fail strength by, base metal strength. Generally, if the joint strength is more than 60% to 70%, we consider it as a good joint. Higher the joint strength is beneficial. For example, if you do any solid state joining process, then you may get joint strength even 100%, like friction welding or friction stir welding. You can get joint strength will be higher than your base strength, because of friction stir welding you get grain refinement. So that's why you get higher joint strength also. For example, if you want to join these two pieces together, here your joining is happening in this region. If you take this region here, your grain size will be something in this zone. In the base material, if you have this kind of grain size, however in the weld zone you may have elongated grains like dendrites or something. It depends. In for some joining you get even fine grains. In this case, like in solid state joining, you get very small grains. Grains will be smaller than your base material. In fusion welding, grains will be bigger than your base materials, isn't it? So due to that also it affects the strength properties. So that's why in any of the fusion welding process, your weakest region may be either your weld region or your heat affected zone. This is your heat affected zone. Okay. So we want adequate mechanical property, that is a desirable. So joint strength will have around 100% is beneficial. So it will also not deter, it will have adequate metallurgical properties as well. If you have all the parameters, then you can tell that a joint is it is a good joint. What are the defects? But none of the process is perfect. So while taking all the precautions also, there may be some defects during welding. So there are different kind of defects, possible defects which forms during welding. One category is surface welding, second category is internal defects, sorry, first category is surface defects, second category is internal defects, and third category is structural defects. So under surface defects category, these are some of the defects which are coming under surface defects category. One is adequate joint penetration, incomplete fusion, arc strikes, overlap, undercut, cracks, underfill. All are coming under surface defects where the defects are visible. So internal defects are coming. Internal defects are porosity. This is porosity, inclusions, then hot cracking, cold cracking, and all. These are the internal defects. These internal defects are not visible. To see internal defects, you have to see some microscope. You have to do the cut the cross section and take the sample and see in a microscope. It may be, if the size is small, you have to go for a high resolution electron microscope. If the size is big, you can see even in a macro photograph, by photograph, or you can show in optical microstructure, optical micrograph. By taking optical microscope also you can see. Then third category is structural defects. So when you weld, during welding what happens? We do clamping. We clamp the material perfectly, then you do welding. So during welding what happens? The material, during welding the material gets heated up. So because of heat it will try to expand, but because of the clamping you are not allowing that to happen. As a result, one type of residual stress is developed in the weld material. During cooling what happens? During cooling the weld pool will try to contract, but because of clamping you are not allowing that to happen. As a result, different type of residual stress will be developed. That is called a residual stress. If you allow that residual stress to happen, that is, if you allow either it will have a residual stress will happen or distortion will happen. If you prevent that clamping part, then the material will distort, then you will get distortion. So these are structural defects. So we will discuss the defects one by one. First one is welding process related defect, that is incomplete fusion. If your fusion is incomplete, suppose you want to join the two pieces like this. Suppose you want to join a thick material and you want to join in multiple passes. So that's why you have to provide proper joint preparation, make joint preparation before that. Then you want to join one piece like this, deposit one piece, then deposit the second piece, second lap, then third lap. By multiple process you have to join, because thickness is more, joint gap is more, so you have to do multi-pass. By somehow, if it will not fuse at some region here, for example, after each pass what you have to do? You have to join one pass. Then what will happen? Then you will get a slag layer on top of it. Then you have to remove that slag layer. Then you deposit the second pass. Then again you will have a slag layer on top of it. Then you have to remove that slag, and again you have to deposit the third pass. By chance, if some slag will retain in the material, then in that region fusion will not happen. Or by chance, if your heat input or something welding process is not perfect, then in some region welding may not happen, fusion may not happen. This is called as incomplete fusion. You can see it may happen at the face, it may happen inside the bead, and it may happen in the face also. Here also it may happen. It may also happen at the root. Okay, this is called as incomplete fusion. It may happen because of lacking in welding, lack of breakup of oxide layer. As I said, if oxide layer will be there, you have to remove properly. If by somehow some oxide layer will be retained in it, then it may not then during in that region it will not the fusion will not happen. Okay, so because of all the processes you may get this kind of inappropriate fusion approach. So next one is inadequate joint penetration. What happens if when you want to join two pieces like this? What is your objective? Your objective is to get, this is called as proper weld. If everything is perfect, heat input is perfect, your speed is perfect, welding speed is perfect, feed is perfect, and all the angle of electrode angle is perfect, and everything is perfect, then you want this kind of weld joint. But what happens because of improper heat input, it will not melt and join, and it will have something like this, and it will have this gap. This is called as inadequate joint penetration. It happens because of improper welding technique, insufficient welding current, improper joint design and all. So it will have something like this. So you have to do properly. You have to calculate, you have to do proper joint design before doing welding. Okay. What will happen if you have this kind of thing, this kind of defect? It may this defect may act as a stress riser because it's a defect. It may act as a stress riser, and during cyclic loading or some loading environment, what may happen? Crack may initiate at this point and it may propagate. So next one is undercut or underfill. Sometimes what may happen if you want to join like this, if you want to this is a perfect joint. If you want to join two pieces like this is a perfect joint. Similarly, if you want to do a butt, this is lap welding. If you want to join two butt welding, so this is a perfect joint. But again, high electric current and fast processing speed, what happens? It may not at the interface here, you will have this kind of defect. It will not able to melt and solidify at the corner region because you may have to get this kind of joint by multiple passes. This may be the last pass. So what happens because of high fast speed of movement of your electrode, too high speed of the arc travel, what may happen? It will not have sufficient time for melting and solidification in this zone. As a result, you will get this kind of undercut or underfill. Underfill means like you want this kind of joint, but you will able to get this kind of joint because of all the parameters: excessive current, insufficient oxygen. If oxygen will be insufficient, it will not able to melt the material properly. Then you get this kind of defect. Too fast arc speed and incorporate or an inappropriate welding design and processing parameters. Okay. Similarly, you may also overlap. Suppose you want to join two pieces like this, and as we discussed, this is your ideal solution. You want to join like this, but because of if there is some oxide layer, and for doing this, suppose you are doing multiple passes, one pass, two pass, three pass, three pass. Then if there will be some oxide layer in between, then what will happen? It will not able to fuse this region, and as a result you will get a, you will have to deposit and you would have already designed your welding condition. So for joining this kind of conditions, for joining this much of volume of material, how much electrode will be required, you would have already calculated. Then after joining, what will happen? Because of this oxide layer at the interface, you will have to end up with joining. It will not able to join this in this region, but it will overlap the top region like this. If you have this kind of overlapping, what will happen? You will have heat input again. It will affect the heat affected zone. Below this, you have a heat affected zone. It will affect the heat affected zone. And as you know, heat affected zone is the weakest region of your weld material. And because of this it will again hamper the property. So it happens because of tightly adhering oxides, as I said, and incorrect manipulation of electrodes. Next one is internal defect. Till now we discussed about the surface defects which are visible. Now we will discuss about internal defects. In internal defects, when you have when you join, for example, what are the we used especially in fusion welding processes, we use flux. What is the function of flux? The flux reacts with the oxide layer and it forms slag. So when you do multi-pass welding, for example, what will happen? If suppose you want to join, suppose you have deposited one layer here, you want to join like this. This is another layer, this is another layer. So what you have to do? Suppose you have deposited one layer, you want to join these two thick plates, thick plates. So what you have to do? You cannot do by single pass. You have to do multiple passes. Suppose you have done first pass. So by first pass you have done. Then what you have to do? You have to remove. And there will be an oxide layer, slag layer on top of it. There will be a slag layer on top of it. Then you have to remove that slag layer. Remove. Okay. Then you deposit after removing. You have to deposit the. Again you have to do the second pass. Then again you have to remove this slag layer. Then again you have to remove the third pass, like that. So while removing, you have to do manually, right? While removing, there is a high chance that some slag may still retain in here, and if it will be retained, it will not be visible in your open eye. Then naked eye, for that you have to go for some NDT technique to visualize that, because these are internal defects. Because of this, what will happen in the weld pool? Slag particles. What is tungsten and copper inclusion? Generally, in fusion, while discussing about fusion welding process, we discussed that there are two types of fusion welding, arc welding processes. One is non-consumable type, arc welding process. Second one is consumable arc welding process. So in non-consumable type, we discussed that the filler material is in non-consumable type. What is happening? This is your filler material, and this is your workpiece. Here you want to join. Here, what you have to do? You have to only provide the connection. So here it is. Then you have to use filler material separately. In non-consumable type, you have to use filler material separately. And this is your electrode, and this is your base material, workpiece. However, in case of consumable type welding process, what happens? You have to use electrode, and you have to use no need to use filler. So in consumable type, what will happen? So you have to take two pieces, then you have to use the electrode. Okay, workpiece, then you have to give polarity. So it may be positive or it may be negative. It is as per your requirement, you have to give polarity. As a result, you will develop an arc and welding will happen. In consumable type, the filler material will be melted, electrode will be melted and deposited in this zone. So we will continue again. We discussed about inclusion type of defect. We discussed about the joining technique for using consumable type arc welding. What is happening here? You control the polarity. One is positive, second one is negative. As per your wish, you change the polarity to get the heat input in both sides. And in conjugal type, we are talking about conjugal type. Here the melting happens on the electrode and the electrode deposits in the workpiece region, this region. So you get the workpiece also melts, filler material also melts, and you get a weld joint. So you got a weld joint here. What happens in case of non-consumable type? This is my non arc welding. Here what happens? You have to use a electrode in such a way that it should not melt. You don't want to melt the electrode and you want to melt the filler. So you need additional filler material. Then what you have to do? You have to again supply the polarity. So what will happen? You have to give some positive connection to one or negative to one, or negative or positive to one. Similarly, negative or positive to second one. But here you want low heat input in the electrode tip and high heat input in the workpiece tip, because you don't want to melt the electrode. Okay, so electrode only will act as to supply arc, provide arc. So you don't want to melt this region. So you want to heat electrons to the you want to hit positive ions to the electrode and heat electrons to the workpiece. Then only you will get high heat input in the workpiece and low heat input in the electrode. So in what condition, which condition you will get more penetration of electron, bombarding of electron to the workpiece? If you provide negative supply to the electrode. So if you provide negative supply to the electrode and positive supply to the electrode to the workpiece, then negative electron will hit the workpiece here. So more heat input will be developed at the interface and less heat input will be developed in this interface. So that's why this process is called as what? What polarity? Electron negative polarity, right? In this case, what happens? In this case, you are in non-consumable type electrode. Because of during joining the electrode, our focus is to melt the filler material, not the melt the filler, not the electrode. That's why we use a very high that's why in filler material we use some materials which has very high melting point. That's why you use either tungsten or copper as filler material. Even though we use some tungsten copper, some level of heat is also developed at the interface, and it may it is possible that some fragmentation of electron, some fragmentation of tungsten or copper from the electrode, some may deposit in the weld pool. As a result, it will, and this is called as inclusion. What is this inclusion? This inclusion is tungsten inclusion or copper inclusion. Okay, so this inclusion, these particles break from the electrode and it falls in the weld pool, and inside the weld pool, which will not be visible. If the particle size will be very small, maybe few microns or something, small particles of electron may break and it may deposit in the weld pool. Okay, so and that is your that is called as inclusion. What is inclusion? Inclusion is a secondary element which deposits in the workpiece. The secondary element may be slag, or it may be some inclusion which may occur, which may be deposited from the electrode material. Since electrode materials are tungsten and copper, so inclusion may so we may get tungsten inclusion or copper inclusion. Similarly, we may also get oxidation. So these are our internal inclusion based internal. So which causes for this slag inclusions? It causes like high, if the filler metal is having high viscosity. So if the weld metal is having high viscosity, or when the solidification is happening very rapidly, then we can get this kind of defect. So this kind of defect is mainly happening because of high heat input at the interface. And if this will be having viscous, then what will happen? It will not float on the top. It will go and sit in the inside the metal. For example, why to get slag intrusion? So slag intrusion, what is the purpose of slag? The filler metal, the purpose of the flux is that it will form, it will react with oxide layer inside the material, oxygen inside the material, then it will form oxide layer, that is in the form of slag. Then since the slag is of low viscosity and lighter weight, so it will float on the top. If it will float on the top, you can easily machine it out to remove the flux slag. If the viscosity of that is, if the viscosity of your molten metal is very high, then it will not allow the slag to come up. So in this case, you will get slag inside the material. So this is because of high viscosity of your metal. It will it may also happen because of rapid solidification. If your objective is that the slag should float on the top, so before the slag, before floating the slag on the top, if solidification will happen in the whirlpool, then it will the slag will be entrapped inside the whirlpool. As a result, you will get slag intrusion. So rapid solidification is another important parameter which entraps the slag. As a result, you get slag intrusion in the whirlpool. Okay. Similarly, undercut and too low undercut. If there will be undercut, the slag may be interrupted inside the may be placed inside the uh, uh, undercut. So it may not able to come out to the top surface. As a result, you will get slag intrusion. Okay. So in all the welding process, almost all the fusion welding processes, you get this kind of slag intrusion. Okay, so this one we discussed. Next one is porosity. Porosity is also a type of internal defect. Next type is porosity. What is porosity? So we do welding in atmospheric condition. So for example, in atmosphere we have gas, different gases like nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen and all. These all gases are there in the atmospheric gases, and these gases have very high liquid solubility and very low solid solubility. You can see from this diagram, gas says at high temperature the solubility limit is very high. At high temperature solubility limit is very high. However, at low temperature you can see the solubility limit is very low. At low temperature, this temperature, the solubility limit is only this much, and high temperature the solubility limit is very high. So what does because of this what will happen? So when you weld in an atmospheric condition, what happen in atmosphere? We have hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and different gases. These gases have high liquid solubility, and these gases have high solubility at high temperature. For example, in molten state is a high temperature state, so these gases are having high solubility. However, when the molten metal solidifies, these gases have very low solubility. As a result, the gases will try to escape, and as a result, in that place you will get porosity. This is the origin of porosity in welding. So this kind of porosity happens in any kind of welding and casting processes. This happens because of hydrogen gas, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, which is available in atmosphere, and because of that it happens. Mostly it happens because of hydrogen. What are the probable causes? We use electrode material, and remember we use in a shielded metal arc welding. What we did, we used a filler material, and the filler material in submerged arc welding we used a filler material, and the filler material was coated. Filler material is coated. So, and there is a high chance that it may absorb moisture from the atmosphere. Moisture is nothing but H2O. So from here hydrogen may come and oxygen may come. Even though you do generally, so in inert atmosphere, generally as what we discussed that the porosity forms because of presence of atmospheric gases, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, which is available in atmosphere. Since these gases have very low high solubility at high temperature and low solubility at room temperature, low temperature. That's why when the molten at the in the when it will be when you during joining at the interface region we get molten state, and since it is in molten state, there is a high chance that these atmospheric gases may be entrapped, come inside the molten pool. Then when the joint become when it becomes solidified, then in the solidification stage, the temperature becomes very low, and at that temperature, since the solidification range is the solubility level of gas is very low, as a result what will happen, it will try to escape from the molten pool. As a result, you get porosity. That is the origin of porosity. That's why what they do, they use different shielding gas environment, so that the shielding gas acts as a boundary between the atmospheric gases and the molten and the welding pool. As a result, there is no by using this, they prevent the interaction of atmospheric gases with the weld pool. But after doing that also, when there is a high chance that the still hydrogen may be entrapped in the material. For example, if you when you use submerged arc welding, sorry, shielded metal arc welding, generally we use this kind of filler metal, which has the coated which is coated with flux material as well as shielding gas material. Okay, and generally they keep it in fridge or something at low temperature before using. So there is a high chance that it may contain moisture, atmospheric moisture, and moisture contains water. So then when you do welding by using this kind of filler material, in spite of you doing the welding with the presence of any inert atmosphere, inert gas like helium or argon or anything, still because of this moisture present in the electrode, it may it may cause this hydrogen will dissociate from this water molecule and it will be absorbed in the weld pool. As a result, it causes porosity. Similarly, these are all other parameters also in flux, and because of operator technique, it may come and entrap in the weld pool. Okay, this is about porosity, generation of porosity. Next one is weld cracking and failure. So in weld cracking, what happens? These are the metallurgical related defects. So till now, whatever we discussed, it may be inadequate joining, fusion, or it may be um, uh, porosity, or it may be porosity formation, or it may be inclusion formation. Till now, whatever we discussed, whatever types of defects we discussed, whichever types of defects we discussed, all are uh, um, uh, process related defects, welding process related defects. Because of improper processing condition, we got this kind of defect. Okay. So now we'll discuss some defects related to metallurgical defects. Okay, some defects related to metallurgy. Okay. So two major type of defects are hot cracking and cold cracking, and these all are related to cold cracking. So we have two kind of defects. One is hot cracking, that is also called as weld metal solidification cracking. Second one is cold cracking, and under cold cracking, all these processes types are coming. So first one is under weld cracking. First one is hot cracking or weld metal solidification cracking. So what is happening in during welding solidification? Suppose we want to join two pieces like this. So what will happen? So this is suppose this is the ideal condition. Okay, so this is the well. So what will happen? when you start welding from one end to other end, what will happen? Suppose we are welding, we are in the big entrance zone and welding needs to happen. And we did welding up to this region. And we need to go like this, go ahead. Welding has to be continued. What will happen? The moment we do welding, what happens? At the interface, what happens? At the interface, now this is the weld pool, right? We want to join precursor. So what happens when you weld? This region melts and you get molten material. During welding, you melt. During fusion welding, you melt the interface region. So this is molten. Then what will happen? How will it solidify? If I take the different steps in welding, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. So what happens initially when you melt the molten metal in this region, what will happen? You will have liquids, you will have liquid, complete liquid. Now what will happen? Now when after melting, when you allow it to solidify, what will happen? At the interface, solid crystals will form. When during solidification, at the interface and everywhere, solid crystals will form. So you will get solid crystals at different region, and in other areas, these are the solid crystals. And other region you will have molten metal. So this is molten metal liquid. Now suppose you are using some material like aluminum, iron and sulfur and phosphorus. Suppose in your material you have iron, sulfur and phosphorus. What will happen? So the melting point of iron is around 1538 degrees centigrade. Okay. Similarly, the melting point of sulfur and phosphorus is very less, significantly less than around 500 degrees, around 1000 degrees centigrade. It is not even 1000, it is very less than 1000 degrees centigrade, which is much lesser than the melting point of iron. So what will happen? So and you are in your weld pool you have all. In your alloy base material you have iron, sulfur and phosphorus. All three things are there. Then what will happen during solidification? What will happen? Which will solidify the melting, the the material which has high melting point, that will solidify fast. Okay, since here iron has high melting point, so iron solids will solidify fast. Then what will happen? Since the melting point of sulfur and phosphorus are low, it will push the sulfur and phosphorus this side. It will push the sulfur and phosphorus away from this region. It will push. So in the solid crystal, you will have the solid crystal is rich in iron, and this liquid metal is rich in your sulfur and phosphorus. Then what will happen? Then after some time, these solid crystals will grow, and after some time, these solid crystals will grow and will and in the remaining area you will have still liquid. Whichever this liquid, it will again remove, since when it will come to the near the melting point of sulfur and phosphorus, then only sulfur and phosphorus will melt, will solidify As long as the temperature is higher than the melting point of sulfur and phosphorus, then it will not, the only the iron solid crystals will form, and sulfur and phosphorus will still, it will be in liquid state. Okay, so it will pull, it will push sulfur and phosphorus away. What will happen afterwards, at the end, what will happen? You will have complete solidification. After some time, complete solidification will happen. In complete solidification happen, what will happen? These grains will grow and meet. These grains will grow. Okay. When these grains will go, for example, if you see the melting point of sulfur, the melting point of sulfur, the melting point of sulfur is only 115 degree centigrade. 115 degree centigrade. The melting point of phosphorus is only 45 degree centigrade. The melting point of sulfur is 115 degree centigrade. Okay. Then what will happen? It will try to, solidify, and at the interface you will have a liquid layer. Then what will happen? Then it has to completely solidify. At room temperature it has to completely solidify. When it will try to solidify, you will have a different contraction. This solid will contract in anything. When you solidify, it will contract. This solid will contract in a different level as like your contraction of this solid. It will also solidify at the boundary. So this will solidify contract different level than this one. As a result, a stress field will be created, a tensile stress field will be created, and you will have crack throughout. So this is called as hot crack or solidification crack. You will get a crack throughout at the center. You will get a crack throughout at the center. So this is called as, because of this liquefaction effect, you get a crack, and this is called as hot crack or solidification crack. The moment you do and welding with the presence of low melting materials, you get this kind of crack. This crack is mainly happening because if your welding material will have, if your base material will have different elements which will have large melting point difference. For example, iron with sulfur and phosphorus. Sulfur and phosphorus has melting point less than 200 degrees centigrade. However, iron has melting point more than 1500 degrees centigrade. In that case, you will have this kind of problem, that is solidification crack. Okay, so to how to prevent solidification cracking, you should avoid phosphorus and sulfur in your material. You should avoid carbon in your material, and you should avoid thick material. Then you will not get this kind of solidification cracking defect. Next one is heat affected zone cracking. What is heat affected zone cracking? Again, this is a metallurgical defect. What happens actually? Heat affected zone cracking is a cold cracking. This is also called as cold, hot cracking. This is called as cold cracking. Or cold. What happens? Generally, this kind of defects happens either inside the material like this, internal, these are internal defects, or it may happen at the heat affected zone. Mostly this affected in the heat affected zone. That's why it is called as heat affected zone cracking or cold cracking. Why it happens? It happens after long time. So when you do welding, it may happen after 1 week or 1 month or 1 year of the completion of welding. Why it happens? It happens because of hydrogen. This is also called as hydrogen embrittlement, a term called hydrogen embrittlement. What happens? As we have already discussed about this fact, hydrogen has very low, so we discussed from the phase diagram that hydrogen has very high solubility at high temperature, but it has very low solubility at low temperature. As a result, during melting of during melting step of welding process, what happens? Hydrogen will be entrapped inside the weld pool. Then what will happen? Then if your solidification rate is very fast, then what will happen? During cooling, this hydrogen has to come out. Okay, because hydrogen has very low liquid solubility, solid solubility. As a result, you may get porosity. By chance, if it will not happen, hydrogen will not able to come out because of rapid solidification or because of very high cooling rate or something. By somehow, if it will not be try to come out, then it will try to entrap inside the material. How will it entrap? It may be entrapped inside the weld pool, or it may try to escape. It may try to go like this, then it will be able to escape and you will get porosity, or it may go also to the nearest zone, heat affected zone. When you go to the heat affected zone, it will be entrapped inside the heat affected zone. Between hydrogen is an interstitial atom, so hydrogen may be entrapped between two atoms. Hydrogen will be entrapped like this. Suppose these are the atoms, and wherever, since it is fitting inside the regular atomic structure, what will happen? It will give a stress field. It will create a stress field around it. And it means during solidification, hydrogen came out from this and it is entrapped and at this zone, mainly nearest to weld metal zone, which is called as heat affected zone. Hydrogen will be, and it will cause a stress field around it. Now, if a material will have some residual stress, then what will happen? This residual stress will act as a driving force for crack initiation. So it will form crack after a long time because of presence of residual stress, or if it gets some driving force, then it will cause cracks, and as a result the crack will form and propagate near this region, near heat affected zone region. So that's why it is called as heat affected zone cracking. You can see from this figure. If a material, if you have H0 means hydrogen level. If you have 0 level of hydrogen at high, so H1, H0 means no hydrogen content is available. H5 means maximum hydrogen content is available. Suppose in a material you have 0%, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% and 5% of hydrogen is like this. H0 means 0%, H1 means 1% like this. Then what will happen? If you have 0% hydrogen with respect to and whatever, if your material has very high residual stress, then also hydrogen and related hydrogen HH cracking will not happen in spite of whatever time you allow it, keep it for keep it. So after 1 year, 2 year or anything, hydrogen cracking will, cold cracking will not occur at all. When you have hydrogen percentage 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, and if you have more percentage of hydrogen, then with the presence of residual stress, it will happen, crack will initiate very soon and it will propagate. As hydrogen percentage becomes less and less, then it takes more time for this to form. So initiation time increases. Okay. So with the presence of hydrogen as well as residual stress, heat affected, this heat cold cracking occurs. So for hydrogen induced cracking requires a high stress, like high residual stress, high level of stress, microstructure sensitive to hydrogen and hydrogen. With the presence of all three, this crack develops. This is called as cold cracking. Some cases, another type of defect is called as lamination and delamination. In some cases, what happens when you have a base material, for example, you have a laminar type base material. You joined different layer by layer, and you have a laminar type base material, or you rolled a base material. Inside the base material, we have some inclusion or already some defects are there. Okay, then with the presence of that defect or inclusion or some second phase particles, when you try to join two pieces, then what happens? Wherever this inclusions will be there, from that point onwards, what will happen? The crack will initiate and it will try to propagate. This is called as delamination type of defect. Okay. So next type of defect is our structural defect, that is called as residual stress and distortion. That is distortion type of defect. In order to understand distortion type of defect, you need to understand the residual stress type of residual stress. That's why even though we have distortion as a defect, we need to understand the residual stress before understanding the distortion. What is residual stress? If you have 3 rods, let us take 3 rods, rod 1, rod 2, rod 3. Take 3 rods. Then what you do? Then connect 2 rods like this by 2 rigid rods again. Then what you do? Then you only hit the middle rod. Hit. When you hit the middle rod, happen the middle rod. So I will repeat again. There are 3 rods. We connected 3 rods to 2 rigid supports. Okay, rigid supports. Then we want to hit the middle rod only. When you hit the middle rod, what will happen? The middle rod will try to expand, but these 2 rods will not allow these to expand the middle rod. As a result, what will happen? You will get, it will try to expand, it will not allow to expand. So you will get compressive stress in the center, compressive stress, and here you will get tensile stress. Tensile stress. Okay. Now what you do? Now you cool it. You have, suppose you have heated this one up just below the melting point of your material. Then you want to cool. During cooling, what will happen? The middle rod will try to contract, and the side rods will not allow it to contract. So after cooling, what the mid central rod will try to contract, but the side rods will not allow it to contract. As a result, what will happen? After cooling, your middle rod will get tensile stress, and side rod will get compressive stress. It means, you can see, so before hitting, middle bar will be in compression and side bar in tension. After hitting, middle bar in tension and side bar in compression. The same phenomena is happening in welding. When you weld 2 plates, plate 1, plate 2, when you weld, what will happen? When you heat, what will happen? The joining area, this is your joining area. The joining area will try to expand, and this area will try to support that expansion. As a result, what will happen? Compressive stress will be developed at this weld zone, and tensile stress field will be developed in the side zone. However, when you cool after welding, what will happen? This zone will be cool. During cooling, what will happen? It will try to contract. So a compressed tensile stress field will be generated in the weld pool, and this tensile stress will be registered by the side base material. So a tensile stress field will be developed in a compressive stress field will be developed in the base material. As a result, in welding, you will get, suppose this is your axis. In welding, you will get something like this. Suppose I will do in a bigger scale. This is welding zone. What kind of stress field will be created? Suppose this is axis, you will get something. Okay. So this is, if this is tensile and this is compressive, so you are getting something, this kind of stress field. So in welding, in the welding zone, you will get a high level of tensile stress field, and a internal stress will be developed, and away from the welding, you will get a compressive stress field. That's why this is called as residual stress. So, and this residual stress will be maximum up to yield stress of the, it will be up to the yield stress of the material. If the yield stress of a material is high, then the residual stress will also be high in that particular case. Okay. So in welding, in the weld zone, you get tensile kind of residual stress, and near the adjacent away from the weld zone, in the base material, you get compressive kind of residual stress. Similarly, in casting also you get different process. So you can do a case study. You take all the pieces and try to these are the different joints, and try to develop the kind of residual stress in this process. So what is distortion? Why residual stresses are developed in during welding? Residual stresses are developed because You are not allowing the distortion to happen, the axial movement to happen. That's why you are getting a residual stress development. If you allow that movement to happen, that is called as distortion. So that's why residual stress and distortion are related. So what is distortion? Distortion may be this is transverse distortion. So this is longitudinal. This axis is longitudinal. And this side is transverse. So in welding you can see the distortion may happen through transverse direction, so it has contracted like this, or it may also happen longitudinal direction, so you can see longitudinally. Initially it was the total length, initial length. Because of the residual stress distortion, it distorted. So this is called as distortion. It is a structural defect. Or it may also happen angular. If you will not support properly during welding, what will happen? When you allow it to cool, contraction will happen. When you will not allow that to happen, then residual stress will be developed. If you allow that to happen, then distortion will happen. Okay. So you can also happen like angular distortion and all. Okay, so which parameters affect the distortion? So this is shrinkage or distortion. So the different parameters which affect the distortion are coefficient of thermal expansion, thermal conductivity, yield strength of the material, and Young's modulus. So suppose you want to join two materials, and if the coefficient, if you want to join two similar materials, and if the coefficient of thermal expansion will be very high, then what will happen to the distortion? Since the coefficient of thermal expansion is very high, so during cooling, what will heating and cooling, what will happen? It will expand or contract in a significant fashion. As a result, you will get very high distortion. So if a material has high coefficient of thermal expansion, then there is a high chance that it will have high distortion. Similarly, what about thermal conductivity? If two materials to be joined has very low thermal conductivity or very high thermal conductivity, suppose they have very high thermal conductivity, then what will happen to the distortion level? If two materials to be joined are having high thermal conductivity, then what will happen? The heat dissipation will be fast. So then what will happen? It will not retain the heat for in the workpiece material. As a result, distortion level will be low. So for high thermal conductivity material, if a material has high thermal conductivity, then distortion in that material will be low. What about yield strength? Distortion will happen or residual stress will occur in the material up to the yield point of the yield stress of the material. So if a material has high yield stress, so there is a high chance that high level of distortion will happen. What about Young's modulus? If a material has high Young's modulus, it means the material is very high rigid. That's why in that case, distortion will less fraction of distortion will happen in that case. Okay. So if you take a case study, let us take aluminum to steel. If you want to join aluminum to steel, then you have to see whether you will get more fraction of distortion or less fraction of distortion. Accordingly, you can control. You have to control your you have to control your clamping arrangement. So if you take aluminum to steel, aluminum. What about thermal conductivity? So we have four parameters. What are the four? Coefficient of thermal expansion, thermal conductivity, yield strength, Young's modulus. Okay. So now let us take aluminum to steel. Aluminum has very high coefficient of thermal expansion, 13.2, and steel has around 6.7. So aluminum has 2 times coefficient of thermal expansion, 2 times CTE, aluminum. Then what about thermal conductivity? Thermal conductivity of aluminum, is again 2 times higher. So residual stress will be less. So for a residual stress point of view, aluminum, from thermal conductivity point of view, aluminum will have less residual stress. However, for coefficient of thermal point of view, aluminum will have high residual stress. Sorry, high distortion. Okay. So what about the yield strength? Yield strength of aluminum is low and yield strength of steel is high. So what will happen? So aluminum will have, since it is having low yield strength, so residual stress, so it will have low residual stress, so lower fraction of distortion. Okay, and what about the next one, Young's modulus? Young's modulus of aluminum is lower than steel. So from Young's modulus point of view, steel will aluminum will distort more. So if you see aluminum and steel, in for two cases, one case aluminum is better. For example, coefficient of thermal expansion point of view, steel is better, and thermal and Young's modulus point of view, steel is better. However, yield strength point of view, aluminum is better, and coefficient of thermal conductivity point of view, aluminum is better. So two case. So distortion and residual stress will be almost less fraction of that can be possible. Similarly, you can do analysis for other combination. How to prevent distortion? By doing proper design, joint design, you can prevent distortion. For example, by providing proper joint thickness. For thick material, distortion will be very high because heat input in this zone will be very high because your metal is thick, more filler metal is required, so more heat input, so it will distort in a significant way. For thin material, less amount of filler metal will be required, so less heat input, so there will be less fraction of distortion. Similarly, if a volume of material will be more, here more volume of material is required to be placed here, so distortion will be more here. Here less amount of volume is required to be joined, so distortion will be less here, you can see here. So volume of weld metal also plays a major role for distortion. Similarly, if you place your neutral axis like this, then you will have more distortion. If you have neutral axis at the center, then if your weldment will happen at the neutral axis, then you will have less distortion. Similarly, you can also balance. Suppose you want to join two pieces like this, then what you can do? You can do if you do weld one side initially, then you start the second side, then you will get high distortion. Okay, instead of doing this, if you do like this, do one side like this, then again join second side, again join the second side, again join first side, like that if you do, then you can balance the welding. Similarly, if you know that distortion will happen like this, then you can place your samples before like this, then you can remedy, you can overcome the distortion part, the position of welding. Okay, so this is about the distortion, residual stress and distortion. With this background, now we finished the syllabus. We discussed about liquid state welding processes, solid state welding processes, solid liquid state welding processes, and then defect analysis, weld analysis. Weld analysis we discussed in terms of weld defect analysis and in terms of residual stress and distortion analysis. Okay, so on defect analysis we discussed some internal defects like inclusion, porosity, and hot cracking and cold cracking, and also we discussed some surface defects such as inadequate fusion, inadequate joint penetration, and many more. Okay, okay. So then we discussed about the residual stress and distortion. Okay. So if anybody has any doubt, I can clarify that doubt. Anybody want to ask any question? So see the screen. In the screen, I have posted an assignment question. So I am going to give this assignment question to you, and that's why I want to have clarification. If you have some problem in some terminology in the question, you can ask me. I am going to give this question as one of the assignment problem to you, all of you. Okay. So if anybody has doubt about the assignment question or doubt about whatever we discussed in today's class, he can ask. You can read this question also. If anybody has doubt, you can ask me. Please read this question. I will read. Multipass submerged arc welding is used to make butt weld of 1 meter long in 30 millimeter thick plate of a mild steel. Single V joint configuration with 60-degree V angle is to be done. Assume that the diameter and length of electrodes used for welding are 4 millimeter and 450 mm, 4 mm diameter and 450 mm length respectively. stopping loss of electrode is 50 mm. So sorry, this is 50 millimeter. Please note down. So this is not meter. This is 50 millimeter. Stopping loss of electrode is 50 millimeter length, and welder deposits 200 millimeter length of weld bead per electrode. If 10% extra filling is done to account for weld crowning, determine the number of passes required. Also determine the welding time. If the welding speed is 100 millimeter per minute, assume that arc on time is 60% of total time. Root gap is 4 millimeter. So there are many concepts in this question. If anybody has doubt, I will ask you. I will clarify that doubt. Please read the question.
What is stumbling loss?
Yeah. So stumbling loss is like when you join together. The question is like you want to make a V joint. So I am asking you to make a V joint. So I want to make a V joint. So stumbling loss means you are going to use a electrode. So the electrode is something like this. Electrode used welding 50 mm. If stumbling loss of electrode is 50 mm, this is 50 mm. So electrode length is 450 millimeter. Okay. In out of 450 millimeter, only 400 millimeter is being used for welding, and 50 millimeter is lost. That is stumbling loss. It means you should not use, you will not able to use 450 millimeter whole electrode. You will able to use only 400 millimeter because 50 millimeter is the loss along the length of the electrode. That is stumbling loss. Any other doubt? Please read the question and ask me. This question has a lot of concepts. If you can solve this problem, it is a good question. Any other doubt? Stumbling loss means in each electrode you are going to use only 400 millimeter. 50 millimeter will be lost. So here there are two critical things I am asking. One is stumbling loss. Second one is 10% extra filling is done to account for weld crowning. It means in the during welding I am expecting you have to deposit 10% extra. This is your 10% extra. So this is your weld bit, right? So this is your 10% extra crowning. So this region is 10% extra filling. So whatever volume you have, this will have 10% of that. You have to add that. So by geometrically you have to calculate this volume, and then you have to add this 10% onto that. It means total weld volume is 1.15 of volume of your weld, 1.10. Yeah. So how will you join this? In a single pass you cannot join, right? Each electrode has 400 meter mm length, and you can use 400 millimeter from each electrode. It is having some diameter. So that volume of material will be deposited in your workpiece material. So it means you need to use number of electrodes. Okay, so you have to use number of passes. So in a single pass you cannot do. You need to do multiple passes. You have to join one pass, then second pass, third pass, fourth pass, fifth pass, sixth pass, like this up to getting the total volume. You have to get number of passes. So I am asking how many passes are required. So you can, if you want, you can quickly calculate also. Any other query about the question? I am going to give this question as an assignment. Any other query about the question? Okay. So anybody want to ask? Anybody has any doubt? Thanks for attending my lecture. Thank you very much.